welcome to the Get At It Gaming podcast. I am one of your hosts, Ben.
I am Alex.
And we have a special episode. We have some special guests today. We have Jay and Rob. You may know them from Nintendo Quest and coming up very soon, N64 Quest. Super excited to have them here. Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome to the Get At It Gaming podcast.
Well, thanks for having us, man. We're super excited. This is going to
We've
be
been waiting.
great.
We've been waiting for this invite, right, Jay? Like we're like, when are they going to ask us? Are we good enough? When will they ask us to come talk games?
Ben, I liked all your Nintendo games back there.
Thank you.
Really nice. That's a nice setup you got.
You can't probably see it from here, but in the very back, one of the first me and my son started collecting. He's 18 now. He was very young 10 years ago when we saw this right here, which is Nintendo Quest here. When we first saw it, he started the first one exactly, and he's showing the awesome special edition that I had purchased. Thank you to Alex for letting me know. I have the second Zelda links. I have the second Zelda there, complete in box. That is his first game that he ever bought.
Oh, that's great. That's my favorite one on the system out of the two, for sure.
Did you know that sells for like $120,000?
He paid $30 for it.
$120,000 is what you've got to pay if you come across it in the wild in the spooky houses in Texas. That's what's got to happen.
Well, you were in Texas. Everything's more expensive in Texas.
The price was a lot bigger in Texas. That was a deleted scene from Nintendo Quest. Now we're going to judge your super fandom because you proclaimed off the air that you're trying not to fan out too much, which is humbling to Jay and I. But Do you know the story about the misidentified NWC Gold Cart Zelda cart?
So I remember it briefly. I have not watched it. So I've only watched it twice this year, Nintendo Quest.
Well, it's not in the film. It's a deleted scene. It's something that we couldn't put in there.
Yeah, we went to this house, and this family brought us into their kitchen. It wasn't a very welcoming environment, so we went in with the crew, and they already had all the NES.
And Ben Gold brought us in there. We met Ben Gold that day, interviewed him. It's like, oh, we'll just go down the street to this house that has some tapes that you might want to pick up.
Yeah. And so one of the ones laid out on the table was Zelda 1, and Rob will correct me here, I can't remember it, but he said it was like worth like $12,000 or something like that. I'm like, oh no, that's a very common game. That's the first Zelda. And he's like, no, you better check again. And then I remember him storming out of the kitchen and like their screen door slamming. Of course, I'm probably romanticizing it a bit more, but I remember looking at Rob and then Rob looking at the crew, and it's like, okay, we probably should get out of here soon because this is getting weird, man.
That is, I think my favorite part of the film is very early in the film where you are talking to a gentleman in Florida, and you had scored one of the harder ones to get at the very beginning. Watching all that kind of pan out for me was like, I loved it because it was like, it sounded too good to be true at the very beginning. Like, wow, we've got one of the hardest ones on the list.
Yeah, he was a nice enough guy. It was very obvious that he wanted to be on camera, and I think there were 6 of us on the crew at the time, and it wasn't in the budget. Plus, I'm not a flyer, so we tried to tell this guy we can't just pick up and, even if we're going to drive, we can't just pay X number of dollars to go where you are in Florida. But he kept wanting to be involved with it, but eventually it just fell through, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that was one of my favorite parts. I tell people when I explain Nintendo Quest is it's not just a grab for all of the North American title NES games, but it is like a full journey between two best friends going on this journey together and just, for me, that's what I got out of it. I know when I first told Alex about it. I mean, Alex, what did you think when you first saw it?
So when I first saw it, I was amazed, first of all, just how well you did with that whole challenge in general. And I'm always amazed with just cinematography, how well directed it is, just everything about it was very good, and it felt very fresh when I watched it. I personally had never heard of it until a few years ago, until Ben told me about it, because I guess I just am not in that sphere on YouTube. Or
No,
just
it's part of our slow traveling word of mouth campaign that
yeah.
takes a decade to reach every possible interested person.
Yeah, like once I heard about it, I was like, oh, this is really neat. And then when we saw the N64 Quest, like that N64 is more of a thing that I'm more attached to, I guess. Maybe it's my age, because I grew up mostly with Super Nintendo, and then N64 was really my first console. And then I mostly do like PS2 now. Like you can see, I really like .hack, so I collect everything .hack. But yeah, just seeing the journey, it reminds me a lot of my friends and I. We live in Indiana, and so there's a lot of like half price books and places called like Disc Replay around here. And so we normally do a journey around Indianapolis about like once a month, and just try to score like either like DVDs, like of like old shows, or like anime, or just games when you can. And that's how I got some of these .hack games, like the really, really expensive one, like the fourth one that used to be like $350 or so, just by doing these sorts of adventures. And so it really is relatable. Not necessarily the whole time crunch, but it really is just relatable of just like, hey friends, let's go on a journey. Let's go find some games. Let's go hang out. Let's go have fun. Do a little bit of road trip.
Yeah, I mean, that's the idea. We were surprised that so many people caught so much inspiration from our journey and wanted to go on their own quest. And some people even follow in the footsteps that we did, trying to recreate stretches of our quest, eventually kind of piecing it together. So it's always really nice to hear that somebody thought something that we did one summer was so cool that they wanted to have that experience themselves.
Now, do you guys have any games, like this is gonna be for both of you, any of the games on that journey that are just super um to you, there's an emotional attachment. For me, it's Double Dribble. It's not an expensive game, but my brother that lives around 2 hours away, we played that religiously. Like, so I've got 2 copies of it. Don't know why I have 2 copies of it, but for me, it's sentimental. What about you guys? What was like the one that you got that was sentimental?
Go ahead, Jay.
There's a few different ways to look at this. It's not an easy question to answer. What I thought back then is different than now. So do you mean back
Mhm.
then one I got that was sentimental, or
Yeah.
now? Back then, Donkey Kong. Rob and I are huge fans of the King of Kong. We love that documentary. We've seen it like a billion times. So as soon as I saw that, I fell in love with Donkey Kong. So the NES Donkey Kong is very special. Zelda 2. Funny you mentioned that. It's one of my favorite Zelda games. I would say those two in particular, and Mario 3, because yeah, even still to this day, I think it has the greatest box art in history. I think just that simple yellow image, or sorry, the yellow background with Mario is beautiful. So back then, I would say those three.
For me, it's always been the Disney Capcom titles. Those are just some really great examples of IP that aren't soured by a video game adaptation. It's fun, it's colorful, it's cartoony, it's like the source material. It's not overly drawn out. They're kind of rare in some instances, which also makes the collectability really fun. Yeah, they're just fun games, right? And they tie into both the cartoon side of things that I like, as well as video games. So what's not to love about those?
Yeah, I think nowadays I watch a couple of YouTubers, and a lot of it is like for emotional. So a lot of the collecting. So how did this wonderful documentary movie come about? Like, how did you guys just? I know me and Alex all the time. We're sitting around. We're like, we should do this, and then we just got to live lives. How did this come about that you guys were going to do this?
Well, I mean, I had finished another film and I wish I could have done more with it. And the first thing I thought of, okay, well, what's something that I could do that's, more forgiving on the budget side of things? I'd always had a love for documentaries. Documentaries were forgiving when it comes to production values, especially if you're on the fly in the moment of something. I'm like, okay, that sounds like a good idea. That's what I want to do. And Jay and I had been talking about games increasingly more and more and more, and he was starting to branch out of our city to go to a few different places. And I essentially just said, what if we make something where I follow you around game hunting, but there's got to be something more than that because there is so much of that out there. And then the resource limitations of our lives kind of crept in. It's like, well, I was living in Las Vegas at the time, even though I'm from here in Canada, but I was living there and back here. I could only afford to shoot for like 30 days. So it's like, I give you 30 days to get them all because that's what you always said. Because I was living there, then I came back here, then I had to go back there because that's where I was living, but I'm from here. So we couldn't do anything more than that. We couldn't afford it.
And I at the time, unfortunately, was managing GameStop. Did that for 20 years, and
wow.
they're very strict about vacation time. So you can't take at GameStop. You can't take 2 weeks in a row. You're not allowed to do it. So I had over 4 weeks. The notion of taking a month off just wasn't going to happen. So a lot of that had to revolve around my schedule too. So I think the total days we actually hunted were 18. It
Oh, wow.
wasn't.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
close to 18 because it was like, okay, Jay would work and then we'd go, like the first few days would just be in our area at night. Like we go to our friends first and then we kind of just go to the next town over a little bit and then come back. So he wasn't getting full days. So when we approached N64 Quest, because of that, we made a few rule changes that we can get to if you guys want to talk about that later. But we had to work with Jay's schedule, which is why we did the first trek, which was like 7 days. Then we had to come back for like 5 days or something like that, and then go out again to kind of wrap it up.
That is rough. I've been in the car just to go to Disney World with my kids. That's a 1-day trip from here. It's like 15 hours. I couldn't imagine doing all of that traveling.
We've done that so many times through 64 and through Action Figure Adventure. I know it's easy for me to say because Rob usually drives, or he always drives. So for me, I love it though. It's the crew is real tight. We've all known each other a while now, a decade. So it's fun
Oh,
just to
wow.
joke around. And the farther you go, the longer the distance is, the more insane you go in the car, and everything becomes absolutely hilarious. And it's a fun time. Like it's fun. Yeah.
There's just something fun about traveling and hitting the road and seeing what's what. It's not about, the journey or the destination, which is always the paradigm that you're posed with, right? Is it the journey to get there? Is it once you get there and everything you experience? It's like, no, it's neither. It's the company. It's the
Yeah.
people you're with while you're doing the thing that you're doing, while you're doing it, and when you finish that you're doing, which is why all of this stuff that we do is so infectious. And the second it's over, it's like withdrawal. It's like,
It's rough.
oh,
It's
back
rough.
to reality.
Like when you get home, that the final day, whenever it is, right? When you get home, you're like, thank God I'm home, and then the next day it's like 5 in the morning, you're like, all right, let's go. And it's like, oh, it's over kind of thing. But we've always done stuff in the past, and this is just kind of the fear I had, because when Rob and I get together, it's nothing but laughs. He's extremely funny, so he can make me laugh like that, even when I don't want to. So I was afraid that when we started this, I wasn't going to be able to keep it together. But I'm very pleased to say that right away, the whole thing was very professional. And did you guys know that that was not our first pickup video?
Really?
For all the hardcore Nintendo Quest fans here. Yeah,
There you
Rob
go.
Rob showed up to my house, planned May 20th, 2000. That was the
May 25th. May
May
25th.
25th,
Yeah.
2000. That was the release of Perfect Dark on Nintendo 64. He showed up to my house because he lived a couple doors down with his camcorder, and we shot ourselves going to the mall, going to EB Games to pick up Perfect Dark. And we shot ourselves getting that and that whole process. We didn't know why. But to this day, it's one of the most precious videos, and only half of it is found. The other half is like gone somewhere. But just watching that, I mean, that was like a pickup video in the year 2000. I remember everyone looking at us in the mall like we were just, what are these idiots doing? Like, oh, we're recording ourselves buying.
Why are you recording yourselves buying a game?
So
You know, it was just like,
my point to that is the video games are what we have in common, but like Rob said, it's all about the company. And this Going to Get Perfect Dark gives us something to do together. There's a reason, right? So whether it's toys, video games, music, whatever it is we love, that stuff is great, but it's really all about the people.
and the same way that you guys probably hang out with your friends, or even when like family comes over you haven't seen in a while, it's like, well, what do you want to do? Doesn't matter. You're going to do something. And every good party ends up in the kitchen. So every good thing that Jay and I do ends up traveling on the road somewhere.
I think that's so awesome because with a couple of my friends, you're right. We end up in the kitchen, usually just chilling and talking, and
Every good party ends up in the kitchen. You're much closer to whatever you want to snack on, whatever you need, like a drink or whatever. The bathroom's always off the kitchen. There's places to sit. That's just how it goes.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I do want
Kitchen Quest. That's coming next year. Kitchen Quest.
I
Search
do
for
want
the
to
best
jump.
kitchen.
I do want to jump into N64 Quest just because it's coming up. It's coming up now. I know that Nintendo Quest, how this happened? In my mind, I love it. It's one of my favorite documentaries. How did that all come about? Were you guys what made you decide on N64? Because I know watching you both, everyone's like, why not SNES? Why not this? And then I know you've said it before, but why N64?
Why isn't it Super Nintendo Quest? Why isn't it SNES Quest?
That's the number one question we get the most is why is it not? Well, you don't like Super Nintendo?
No, oh, what did that system do to you? Oh, you couldn't do it, huh? That's the thing. Jay, you want to talk about it?
Yeah, sure. I'll go half, then you go half. We'll tag it.
All right, we'll figure it out.
I would say going back to the kitchen parties, it's all connected, right? The Nintendo 64 was the last great couch co-op system, where almost every first party to second party to rare stuff, that it was all made to be played together. And we have such fond memories like you guys do with playing Mario Kart, GoldenEye, Tony Hawk. The wrestling games were fantastic. Just doing all that with our friends every weekend, going to Blockbuster, renting the games. So for that, I mean, I find the games of the 64, most of them just completely incredible. And I do love the Super Nintendo. I have a lot of love for that, but I can't say the same for that library. So when we were trying to decide, and by the way, there's nothing that says we're not going to do Super Nintendo at some point. Just this is what we chose. So it means I would say the most to us together. Where the first one was I wanted the NES collection for myself. This one is okay. Well, what system hits home for both of us? Rob was more a Genesis guy, but we both came together for 64. So
yeah, and I mean, I guess because we start with NES, people expect that we're going to go in order, even though we never said we would do a sequel. In fact, for years we swore off doing a sequel, so it would never be compared. And there's something about doing Super Nintendo after the NES that makes it even more of a comparison between the two. Frankly, the Super Nintendo, again, while it's got some great games and some really hard-hitting staples and some cool collectible stories, is just not that interesting of a console in the grand scheme of things when you compare it to something like the 64, right? The 64 was the beginning of 3D gaming. It's the beginning of like console aesthetics changing, where you have all those fantastic colors, and it's not just a monochromatic gray, black and white box that sits by your TV. Like there's changes there. There's rumble packs. There's the beginning of so many franchises that start on the 64 that are still going today, and quality of life things. There's the discussion of cartridges versus optical discs, other players in the field coming up. So it's not just Nintendo and Sega. There's Sony and what is Sega doing? And then, of course, Turbo and CDI and 3DO and the rise of handhelds and, massive companies that aren't Nintendo that are making huge games for the 64, like Rare and what that's doing, and mature titles on 64, which we'd never seen before. It just seemed like there was infinitely more to discuss and examine in that time of gaming than the Super Nintendo. And I kind of liken it to as like the SNES did everything that the NES did, but everything was better and more refined and evolved. But with the 64, it was like a lateral shift, and it was like a brand new territory where anything goes. And then it was like, okay, the 64 comes out like 10 years after the NES, more or less. We're making this 10 years after Nintendo Quest. It's like there's a nice little parallel there too. So it just kind of makes sense. But all Quest, we discovered this whole community of people out there that we didn't know. Like we knew there was YouTubers and other gamers, but as we hit the road, it was like the Wizard of Oz, right? You're on the Yellow Brick Road and you're just making these allies as you go on this quest to the NES Emerald City, if you will. And so, what better represents the community than the 64, a console that was designed to have 4 native control ports to bring people together, and so that nobody had to wait their turn. Everybody could just kind of play. So again, it just kept checking boxes. And again, we never said we were going to do anything in any order. People would have been upset if we did Sega or if we would have, picked like Xbox or something, because they still would have said we're Super Nintendo Quest. Where is it? I need it.
Listen, for years, Ben and Alex, I was begging Rob. I'm like, dude, we gotta do TurboGrafx 16 Quest.
Oh, that would be awesome.
And he's like, do you want anyone to watch this? I'm like, that's a good point.
I mean, I'd love to see Sega Master System Quest personally, but
See, everybody's got their own quest, but the cool thing is you can go on your own
Exactly.
quest. You don't
Yeah.
need us to do it. You too can take half a summer and all your dollars and go out and go get your stuff if you want. Or you could just be patient and let us get our crap together and figure out what we feel like we can do for a number of reasons, and then let us do it.
Just so you know, I'm happy there's a sequel. I don't care what it is.
Oh, I appreciate that.
It could have been antique doll collecting. I would have watched it.
Hey, there's something.
you
What
know?
about postage stamps? Jay and I
I-
always joke, what's worse, collecting stamps or collecting coins? They're both kind of filthy.
I would watch probably both.
Yeah,
Just so you know.
that's fair.
So tell us more about N64 Quest. I know there's a goal and there's a mission with this one. Tell our listeners and our viewers all about N64 Quest and like what this takes place and what we're working towards.
So
Go for it, Jay.
the evolution of everything we've done over the last decade started with Nintendo Quest, where I was collecting the system for myself, a dream of mine. Awesome. So we wanted to take a little bit of a break from the games, and then we started talking about toys, another big passion that Rob and I share. Okay, well, let's do that. But at the time, through GameStop, I was working with a charity, the Children's Health Foundation here in our hometown for sick kids, the Children's Hospital. And I'm like, well, we kind of both thought, well, why don't we go out? We will get the greatest toys that we find that we think we can basically turn for a profit, and those dollars will go to the Children's Health Foundation. So we came up with the auction idea. So we can enjoy the toys through getting them and collecting them and stuff, but ultimately they're going to a cause much greater than just for us and for our shelves, right? It was going to
And part of that was like everybody you see online is just collecting for their own shelf, and it's like
Mhm.
it's cool to see, and there's still that sense of discovery, and you still get the backstory on the item. But what if you could take that thing you're passionate for and make a change and like literally affect somebody's life and livelihood because of something you care about and the effort you're willing to put into it, which was the underlying kind of principle of Nintendo Quest. If you want something and you want it bad enough, call it a dream, call it whatever you want. Take 30 days of your life and try to make it happen. And I guarantee the effort you put into that will yield dividends beyond anything that you can imagine. So, if that kind of thing could change Jay's life, what if we did the same thing but changed other people's lives? So, that was the thought behind kind of doing stuff with Children's Health and kind of making like an awesome auction of the coolest toys that we came across, the most noteworthy action figure relics from all eras, all brands, wherever we could find them on our route.
Yeah.
And then the evolution from that, we did 2 seasons of Action Figure Adventure, and then with Nintendo 64 Quest. Actually, sorry, during the filming of Action Figure Adventure, my mom was diagnosed with dementia and Alzheimer's. So it was different because that was hitting home, right? So that was affecting me personally, and it's the worst disease on the planet. It's just absolutely horrific. So I just asked Rob, because we're going to continue with the charity aspect that we both believe in, and I said, can we switch it to the Alzheimer's Society, specifically the division here in Ontario that helped my mom? And he's like, of course we can, because Rob is affected by this as well. And so that when you put that kind of, I don't want to say pressure, but when you put that kind of weight, it makes the adventure that much more grand, I think. At least for myself, it's much more of a purpose instead of just completing a number and putting it on my shelf. It's
there's a greater personal motivation when you could possibly help somebody that you love, or help stop somebody else out there from going through what you're going through with your loved one.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been about 8 years now. I lost my grandmother from that, and so when I saw that, I definitely kind of like there's a personal thing there, like what you guys said, and so
yeah.
I love that you guys were doing it towards that. And you're right. I think a lot of the YouTubers, and it's not knocking anybody, but I like how you guys are doing things now towards this. I watched the action figure one. My older brother owned a comic book store for a longer time, and I got him hooked on it. And he was
Oh,
like,
cool.
especially when you're talking about GI Joes, because that's what his big thing was. Um, and so now it's Star Trek. Anything Star Trek, he's got.
Nice.
And so, I think doing these with a purpose of like, hey, I can do some good with this is what makes it even better. There with you guys and N64 Quest, um, I'm excited. I've watched the trailers. It definitely looks like it's another wild ride out there in the wild blue of hunting for video games. Is there any little bit you can kind of give us, a little bit that you were kind of like shocked at when you were out there? Or it could be Nintendo Quest 2, something that completely shocked you out there. Because I don't want to give anything up for N64 Quest.
All I'll say is, because we don't want to give anything away, right? Because we're in the middle of our Kickstarter campaign. It goes to the 22nd of September. People can jump in, get a digital copy like 6 months ahead of it appears anywhere in the world. And right now it's only slated to drop in Canada and Germany. And that's like in mid 2025. So if you back our campaign, you're going to get it like in November. Access week by week to the now 14 episodes that are going to be a part of that series. All I will say is it fits as such a perfect companion piece to Nintendo Quest. In many ways, it's different because it's a series. It's like I said, 14 episodes and not a 90-minute film. But there's an energy that flows so well. There's a lot of parallels that I'm doing on a production level by choice so that it feels the same, but it also calls back to it. But at the same time, it is so vastly different for a number of reasons that it totally feels like a new quest with new obstacles and an entirely new energy. And especially because that ticking clock has been reduced from 30 days in Nintendo Quest to just 14 days for Nintendo 64 Quest. It's like all of a sudden, like the pressure just gets cranked up, and Jay's wallet and his head are like stuck in a vice.
Yeah, I mean, we're always out there collecting. We've never stopped. But to go out there and collect for one system, I mean, it's expensive. And I mean, retro games. I mean, everyone listening here, if you want to invest your money into something, retro video games, I guarantee you, that's one market that's never gone down. Even with the digital starting to creep in like 2007, 2008, they've just rose. Thank God. So you want to invest your money, man? I'm telling you, vintage retro video games.
I just my insurance had to come appraise my house. And as they're walking through, he's like, "What are these?" I said, "Those are NES cards." So they had to add that to my insurance.
Yeah, rightfully so.
In case like something happens.
In case something happens to Jack Nicklaus Golf and like you can't get another copy of it and you really want to play at the Golden Bear at Par 4 on Pebble Beach, you got to play it.
I only have one copy of that one. I don't buy two copies of that one.
For now. It's going
For
to be your
now.
favorite. It'll be rule of 2. You'll need to go get it sealed.
Don't worry, I'll get you one next weekend when I go out to Indianapolis. Don't worry about it.
I'm gonna get that dropped off on my doorstep, and it's gonna be like Jack Nicholson's fighting. What was the one that was like fighting golf? Wasn't there one that was called fighting golf?
Lee Trevino's fighting golf from The Simpsons, right?
Yeah.
The funny thing is, now that I say Jack Nicklaus golf, we're going to get people that come up to us at shows and want us to sign Jack Nicklaus's golf because they heard this podcast. It's going to be hilarious. Sign my Jack Nicklaus. You're like, oh, why? So, you know what? You should get DuckTales too, and we'll just keep it.
So how and I know I was talking about this with Alex. First off, Alex was like, after he saw the trailer, we were talking, he's like, they're doing it in like half the time, which is crazy. 10 years ago, game prices on retro games were different than they are now. Did you guys run into that where you're like, holy crap, like big differences there?
Can we talk?
Like there's a shot in the trailer of Little Samson on purpose.
There you go.
With the price tag of $4,500. Just not because it has anything to do with N64 Quest, but just to put it in there and show people how expensive things are. And for anybody that watched Nintendo Quest, for them to see the price of that game specifically now and how that's tied to our past. Sorry, Jay, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask you if we could talk about Samson in the one store, because
it's in the trailer.
That now is, you asked me about sentimental games. That game, for so many reasons, is my number one. For so many different reasons. And the last one being the game is great, but there's other reasons. But when we met Todd Curtis, he's just such a wonderful person. We didn't know him before. We went into the house and he let us in. His family let us in, and he gave me Bonk and Little Samson for $200 each. Those were, I mean, they were worth more than that back then. But he gave me a huge break on the price. But you can see, right, $200 for Samson in 2013, 2013, and 4,000. Granted, that is Canadian dollars, but still, 4,500 for Little Samson now. I mean, yeah, that's crazy.
I remember when I was younger, I was in Walmart. That was in a clearance bin for $2.
You remember that too?
The front door. That'll haunt you now.
Oh, I'm like, that could be like somebody's college.
The stat on Samson too was there's less than 10,000 sold in North America.
That is in.
It was like basically a first run of it, and then that was it, because it came out in '92, right? So it was like everyone had Super Nintendo and Turbo and Genesis. Nobody wanted the NES stuff, so it just sat there.
So that's another big difference, though, the prices, right? So in Nintendo Quest, we don't disclose Jay's budget. If you pay attention to the prices that you do here, you'll be able to figure out what he's got. And the rise and fall of that graph is 100% accurate. So you could probably get within like $100 or $1,000. But in Nintendo 64 Quest, he's got a budget of 20,000 Canadian dollars, which is about 15,000 American dollars to get all the carts too. So that's not a lot of money to play with, because that's kind of, at least when we started this, pretty close to what the retail was. So in order for us to get those carts and then have to flip them, it meant he has to make deals every stop of the way, every chance he gets.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that. It's funny you mentioned your Kickstarter. I'm going to make sure that, I think I've listed it several times on our Facebook and our Instagram, but I'm going to make sure it's also in the notes here. So anybody that's listening, definitely check out their Kickstarter. I am going to do the Kickstarter.
I have a question for you, Alex.
Yeah.
I got to know, when you saw the trailer, and Ben, what jumped out that surprised you that you didn't think you would see? Or was it exactly what you thought you'd see, you were hoping for?
Go ahead, Alex. You go.
That's a good question. I don't know, because I also I kind of watched the Nintendo Quest kind of near when I saw the actual trailer for N64 Quest. I was just happy that it was just more of the having fun type stuff, honestly. Like, I wasn't really looking for specific
things. It's okay if you say, I was waiting for more PS2 and there wasn't enough PS2 there.
Listen, I was like, man,
I'm not going to back your campaign.
Where's .hack at? You know, I don't know.
.hack Quest.
Yeah, .hack Quest. I'm almost there. I'm basically there. I just need one more guide. That's it.
It's funny you mentioned .hack. I remember those unpacking all of those at GameStop. and selling those. There's so many of those PS2 games because that was when I started there. There were so many of those
Yeah.
games like Rule of Rose and stuff like that that would
Mhm.
come in. I knew they were going to be worth money, but it's like, oh, if I just grabbed them, like even the N-Gage stuff, man, is worth
Yeah.
a fortune now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, once I saw the first like teaser when you were talking about it, I was like, okay, and I wanted it. I didn't care what it was. I was going to watch it. Um, a lot of my gamer friends and stuff. And I know I sound like a fanboy. My brother, who is
No, I appreciate it. You got to
oh no,
understand, man. Like this takes us years to do, and it's been years since the last one. And there's no money in this for us at all.
yeah,
Like I'll be lucky to break even on the cost of the series in 5 years, and only at that point will I maybe start to see a return on the investment of like my time. So like the fact that you're so excited is what fuels me and Jay to some degree, I'm sure. So like it it sounds cliche, but you guys make it worthwhile to
yeah.
do.
Well, I was telling my brother about like this, you guys being on the podcast, and he's like, "What would you compare it to?" I said, "It would be compared to when you guys met William Shatner, but they're probably much nicer." So,
Well,
Well,
this is going to cost $100 per question. So
well, that's all the time we have today.
sweet.
um, I feel like I've taken most of this, and Alex, I know there's stuff
No,
you kind of want to talk
ask
to.
us. We got time, man. We're happy. There's no chill. There's
Yeah,
no rush.
Yeah.
We got probably another 20 minutes at least.
Yeah.
If you guys want to keep talking, we're here.
For sure.
No pressure, but just make it good.
All right. Well, I have a question. I don't know if this is necessarily going to be reflected in there like this or not, but which is better, Mario Kart 64 or Diddy Kong Racing?
ooh, that's a tough one.
I know my
No,
answer.
that's easy.
that's easy.
It's easy. We having interviewed the fellows at Rare, specifically that worked on Diddy Kong, I've got to go with Diddy Kong.
Thank you.
Just to back up
That's
their
correct.
on-camera presence. But also, I mean, it came out after Mario Kart, and they saw it, they got to play it, and they got to take it to the next level, right? Now, that said, I find Diddy Kong completely unforgiving, and it is like, in order to master that game, it requires precision and perfection, the likes of which do not exist in my reflexes today.
Yeah, Diddy Kong. Diddy Kong was great. Rare was the masters of making secrets back then. A lot of them are still unsolved today. A lot of the banjo stuff, but it was really cool to see 3D models too. Because Mario Kart didn't have that. So, but I would say Diddy Kong because you get the water, the air, and you get the land. So you get 3 vehicles too.
Which is what Mario Kart did years later, right? Of course, Sonic did it before Mario Kart eventually made the transition, but still, Diddy Kong.
Yeah. I recently got a copy of Banjo Pilot for Game Boy Advance, so it's kind of like the evolution of that, except stripping away the water and the ground stuff, but just doing air. So Diddy Kong's always in the back of my mind. Like I always have arguments with friends and just people on the street. Obviously, just like, hey, Diddy Kong's better.
You just go up to people on the street and say, "Diddy Kong freaking rules," and then like punch them in the stomach or something.
You wanna
and run
know
away.
why?
I kind of want to.
I bet you it's because they look at Mario Kart as a series, right?
Mhm.
And Diddy Kong only has one, so they probably think like,
For now,
the Wii one is great.
One and a half, I would say, because there's technically the DS remake, but it's
yeah,
it's not really. It's basically the same thing, just a little different.
that's a hipster answer. That's
Yeah.
disqualified.
Oh, okay.
That'll be $100. That's $100. That costs you $100.
Sorry, Ben. I'm running out of money.
I know, right? I'm gonna have to borrow from my kids here in a minute. I do want to ask this real quick. So one of my other favorite parts of Nintendo Quest, you guys have the gentleman that he wanted you to make him look evil over the Jetsons cart, right?
JD Lowe.
Has there ever been any has he ever reached out to you guys later on and said anything like?
He's a buddy of ours. He's a totally cool dude, man. We met and we toured the film in 2015 across North America and Du Bois, yeah, is that where that was?
It was Columbus.
Columbus, Ohio, and he was there, and we had just a lot of fun with him. Yeah, so we met him obviously for the first time. Then we didn't know him, but afterwards getting to talk to him. Then there's Facebook and stuff, right? So we all added each other and kept in contact. Yeah, he's a cool dude, man.
I mean, you
The-
see the scene play out literally as it is, where
Yeah.
it's tense, and I pushing pretty hard with how like ridiculous this guy is for doing that to us. And Jay's just like, nope, it's fine. Collector karma. I like that kind of term. I've never heard it before. I think it's going to bite him in the ass. May have deleted some of that, but everything ends up being super cool. He's cool. So as I'm cutting the film, I'm like, hey man, can I refer to you as Jay's arch nemesis? He's like, yeah, that's fine. And I sent him a screenshot. He's like, oh, that's hilarious. I said, okay. I said, I want to position you as the villain. I don't want you to feel like a target though, because a lot of these video game documentaries, other hobby documentaries, people, live in their mom's basement. It's easy to shoot fish in a barrel and make people look like crap. And like, oh, now they're making fun of him instead of having fun with the scenario. So he was totally on board for everything. He didn't know how it was going to play out or unfold, but he was happy to see it. And like Jay was talking about, we filmed the Power Tour. So if you have this version of Nintendo Quest, you can get on Vinegar Syndrome right now, which is the ultimate version of Nintendo Quest. It comes with the 9 episodes of the Power Tour as well, where we tour the film around after we finish it. Jay and I compete to complete a list of games that we're looking for. And we come back to Columbus, and JD is there at the screening, and he gets a really cool surprise as a result of everything that's going on. So good times. But yeah, he's cool.
Yeah, that was like the best because I love the role you have of him looking over at Jay at like different areas of the store.
Yeah.
And that was that's again, none of that is staged, right? So Rob's really, really great at editing. He's really talented at doing stuff like that and making you see the things he wants you to look at in a frame. But you can that part when I'm in the parking lot, I'll never forget it. Like I was mad. I was really mad, and Rob just, he's directing, right? He's pushing me. He's like, "Oh, you got to go in there, man. Don't you want to go face this guy?" And that's when I'm just like, "No, man." I'm like, I don't want to do that. It's not my character. I don't want to be like that.
But you've got 30 days, and he could get these games anytime for the rest of his life.
That
he
part.
knew that, and they knew it, and they're trying to screw you over. This is blasphemy.
I love that. I think, I've been there. So I've been at a couple of the places here. Like we go to the flea market a lot and they're starting to know me really well. So they're like, oh, and they know I go for video games and stuff. We have a friend of ours that is a reseller that goes there as well. And so every time he texts me, he goes, oh, I'm not going to be at the flea market. I'm like, oh, that's too bad. Because then it's like he's not going to get there early
Get all the good
to
stuff.
scalp everything. Yeah.
Right.
And we love you, Matt. I'm just,
Do those opportunities
Keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing.
Do those opportunities still exist? Like really? Like is there still those opportunities to find a little Samson for $20 and nobody knows what they have? Like I don't know. I don't know if that still exists anymore. Do you know what I mean? I wish it did, but I think with everyone having a smartphone attached to them, it's pretty difficult. Then I mean, unless you get those lazy sellers like garage sales or whatever, they're just like, I just want to get rid of the crap. I don't want to look up anything individually. But
the first time Alex told me about it, we went together. I picked him up, and I got there, and we're looking, and we find this box with an NES. I still have the NES. There were boxed NES complete and box games in there, and so I'm like trying to buy the games, and Alex is like, ask him how much for the whole box. And the guy's like, $50.
yeah,
like Little Nemo was in there, complete in box. These are
Jack Nicklaus Golf, complete in box.
I was not in there because now that
imagine if it was.
Metal Gear was, I think.
Yeah, Metal Gear was.
Oh, that's good.
I'm gonna get that now, and I'm gonna put it up there just so next time I'm gonna take a picture and be like, "There it is, completed box." I'm gonna be. So I do want to give you guys time. I know you guys also do other things as well. Definitely pitch a couple of the other things you do. I know, especially with you, Jay, you do streaming and things. I really want to get those out there so people can find you guys.
Jay, plug it up. Let everybody know where to get you and why to get you there.
I'm on YouTube. I stream on YouTube full time as well as create gaming videos, and it's just my name. It's not hard to find me. It's just Jay Bartlett, but I stream Wednesday through Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern. We do anything from celebrating new releases, like the new Zelda comes out on the 26th. We're going to be playing that. And then we do a lot of classics. If you want to see me sweat to Ninja Gaiden, like we did last week. come on by. I've also started to make history of videos, and through the blessing of Rob, got the go ahead to do my own hunting videos now, so you can find a few of them.
He didn't need my blessing. Don't say that. You don't need my blessing to do game hunting
It's
videos.
a conflict of interest. I was afraid of that. It's like,
Not really.
Nintendo Quest, and then I'm going to go out and shoot at the same places. But
Frankly, I consider it promotion because if somebody's watching your game hunting videos, they'll only want to watch the stuff that we're doing. So I don't see it as a conflict. It's an extension of.
So come on by YouTube, Jay Bartlett. We have a great community. We have nothing but laughs for like most of the day. So look forward to seeing you guys there.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm going to put the Kickstarter up. The Kickstarter is still available for N64 Quest. I myself, this evening, I got permission from my boss, who was staring at me earlier through my office. I am going to commit to, what was the one we talked about the other day?
Associate producer pledge? You're going to do it, aren't you?
I'm going to do like the one, was it 150, 160?
That 150, yeah, that's the associate producer credit.
I'm gonna say right now, my kid lost a bunch of teeth, so the tooth fairy left me a good amount of money. So, but I'm going to pledge that this evening. I want all of our community to pledge whatever they can to get this ball rolling. I personally am going to do it anyway because I love this, and I want a Blu-ray, and I want that.
Well, that sweet physical media. I love it.
That extra third disc that's exclusive to basically that tier and the tier before.
Yep.
Telling you, it's the way to go. I like it. I appreciate your support.
Awesome.
Yeah, and we're gonna put all of your guys' links. Jay will put your YouTube in there. Rob, do you have some stuff that you want to definitely throw out there? Because we pitch away.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, I'm just happy to promote Nintendo 64 Quest. I'm a full-time documentary filmmaker. I basically focus on pop culture driven stuff. Anything that's cool, I want to make a documentary on it. My upcoming documentary on Saturday morning cartoons and Filmation, which is a pillar of everything cartoons, is in the works. And I'm also signed on to direct John Romero's book, Doom Guy. So him and I have been talking back and forth, and that's the next kind of big project I would say that's on the horizon. So if you like Doom and John Romero, and again, 90s video gaming and defining kind of entries in the industry, that will be a cool one for you guys to check out.
Yeah, I was super excited about the Funimation one. I remember watching He-Man and a bunch of those with my He-Man always ended bad in my house though, because my brother and I would play and I always was Skeletor. I ended with bruises on like 90% of the time. Like all the time. He jokes about it now, but I was like,
you guys playing football or action figures? Like seriously, how do you get bruises?
I always got Skeletor, and if I didn't play right, I was taking a figure in the forehead. That's for sure.
Jesus.
Yeah, we grew up with a family of 5. That's what happens. We're gonna have all their links there, guys. I appreciate the time of you guys being on here and talking with us, and this was awesome.
Yeah, we'll have us back whenever. I mean, once the series comes out, you're a backer, so you're going to get the series in November. Again, 6 months at least ahead of everybody else in the world. Have us back. We'll have a bit of a spoiler-free chat about what you thought, and we'll have some more laughs.
Absolutely, yeah. We would love to have you back. We actually take break. We pre-record in November and December, so we won't be back till first of the year. So
perfect. That's great. That'll give you time to absorb, digest the now 14 half-hour episodes of Nintendo 64 Quest and Jay's epic ultimate 64-bit road trip. 10 years in the making.
That is awesome. Well, thank you guys for being on the show. We have like a little go out that we do with everybody. So at the very end, I ask Alex if he has anything left to say. He says no, but to get at it. And then everyone just says get at it at the very end. If you guys would jump in with us, that'd be awesome.
So he says it, then we say it.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep. So Alex, is there anything else?
Nothing except get at it.
Get at it.
Get at it.